Welcome to Fear and Fiction, where the stories are strange and the fear is real. What's going on, Fear and Fiction family? We are back at it. Hope everybody's doing well. I want to thank y'all for watching the stories and supporting. Things are going very well. So today, we got a holiday coming up in a couple of days, the 4th of July, so I decided to dive into some 4th of July horror stories. Please tell me your thoughts. What story is your favorite? Now let's get into it. I grew up in Charlton Pollard in Beaumont, Texas. Block parties on the 4th of July are a serious thing on our street. You don't just throw some burgers on a grill. You shut down the whole block. You bring the speakers out. You do it right. I moved away for work about 4 years ago, but I make it back for the 4th whenever I can. And this past summer, I made it back. Got in the night before, spent the morning helping my cousin set up, folding tables, extension cords, the big cooler my uncle refuses to let anyone else carry because of what happened the last time. By 4 in the afternoon, the block was going. Music, food, kids running everywhere, the smell of grills going at both ends of the street. The whole thing that I always come home for. I took pictures all night. I always do. It's something my grandmother started. She wanted a photo record of every family 4th, and I kept it up after she passed. I took maybe 40 photos over the course of the evening. Candids mostly, people eating, people dancing, the sky going orange then dark, the neighborhood fireworks starting up around 9. I got back to my cousin's house around midnight and I went to sleep. The next morning I was going through the photos on my phone the way you do, just reliving the night a little before I started the drive back. And I noticed something that made me stop and go back to the beginning. There's a man in the background, not in every photo, but in most of them, starting maybe the 3rd or 4th photo of the night and continuing through almost to the end. He's not in the foreground, not part of any group I was photographing. He's in the background, at the edge of things, always slightly apart from the crowd. Dark shirt, tall, standing in a way that isn't threatening and isn't casual either. The particular stillness of someone who is present at something without being part of it. I went through every photo methodically. He's there in the background of the food table shots, there in the background of the dancing photos. There at the edge of the group shot, someone took of us kids, me and my cousins and a few old friends, that we always take on the 4th, our annual update. He's in that one too, far enough back that you might not notice him if you weren't looking. I texted my cousin, sent her 3 of the photos with his location circled, asked if she knew who it was. She looked at them and said she didn't recognize him. I called another cousin who had been there and described the man. He said he didn't see anyone like that at the party. Then I posted 2 of the photos in our family group chat and asked the same question. Nobody knew him. My aunt, who has been to every 4th of July block party on that street for 30-something years and knows everybody in a 6-block radius by first name, looked at the photos and said she had no memory of a man like that being there. Said if he was there, she would have noticed. She notices everyone. I went back through all 40 photos again looking for any shot where someone is looking at him, talking to him, handing him food. There's nothing. He's in the background of photo after photo, and nobody at that party is interacting with him in any image I have. He's just there, watching. And then there's the last photo. The last photo I took that night was of the fireworks going up over the neighborhood, or it was supposed to be. What I actually got was mostly a dark sky, with a burst of color at the top and a lot of the people on the street below, looking up in silhouette. My cousins, my aunt, the neighbors, all their upturned faces. He's not at the edge in that one. He's right behind my group, close, closer than he ever was in any of the other photos. And because of the way the fireworks lit up the sky and the way everyone's faces are tilted upward, there's actually enough light falling from above to see his face clearly for the first time in any of the 40 photos. I have looked at that face probably 200 times. I cannot tell you whose it is. I can tell you that it is the face of someone who is not a stranger, in the way that a stranger feels unfamiliar. It is the face of someone who feels specifically known, in a way I cannot access or account for, like a face from a dream you recognize perfectly in the dream and can't recall at all when you wake up. I don't know who was at my family's 4th of July block party on that street in Charlton Pollard. I don't know why he's in 40 photos, and nobody has a single memory of him being there. I don't know why the last photo put him right behind us, looking at the sky with us, like someone who belonged there. My grandmother started the tradition of photographing every 4th because she said you never know who you might see when you look back at the pictures. She meant it as a reason to document, to remember. I think about that differently now. I'm home in Pensacola for the summer between my junior and senior year of college. My family has lived in the Beaumont de Villiers neighborhood, what the old heads called the blocks, for 3 generations: Belmont Street and de Villiers Street. The blocks have weight to them. The 4th of July in the blocks is exactly what you'd expect. The whole neighborhood out, grills going, music coming from every direction, kids running around with sparklers, the old men on their porches, the kind of July 4th that feels like it belongs to the neighborhood as much as to the calendar. I had been at my friend's house a few blocks over watching the waterfront fireworks from her back porch, and when it was over, I decided to walk home rather than wait for a ride. It was a nice night, and I know every street down there. I've walked it 100 times. It was around 10:45, maybe 11. The fireworks had just ended, and the streets were starting to empty out as people folded their chairs and went inside. There was still music somewhere. There's always still music somewhere in the blocks, even late, but it was quieter than it had been. That particular quiet that settles over a neighborhood after a celebration, when the day is releasing. I was on the Belmont side, walking north between Gregory and Cervantes, which is a stretch I've walked so many times I don't even really see it. Houses on both sides, old trees, that particular smell of the neighborhood on a warm night. And I heard my name, not loudly, not from behind me on the street, from the left, from between 2 houses, like someone standing in the narrow gap between them calling out to me. My first name clearly, in a voice I couldn't immediately place. I stopped and looked. The gap between the houses was dark, nothing visible. I figured it was someone I knew stepping out for air or something. This is a neighborhood where people know each other, so I said hello. No response. I kept walking. Maybe 30 seconds later, from the other side of the street, my name again. Same thing. From between 2 houses, same level of volume, like someone trying to get my attention without raising their voice. I stopped again, looked. Dark gap between houses. Nothing. Now I'm walking faster. Not running, but that particular walk where your body has made a decision that your dignity hasn't caught up to yet. I crossed to the next block, stayed in the middle of the sidewalk, kept my eyes forward, my name one more time. From the right, same source. The gap between houses. Same voice, though I still couldn't place it. Same tone, like someone who knew me and was trying to flag me down without urgency. Like it was patient, like it had been doing this for a while and was not particularly surprised I was still walking. I got home faster than I've gotten home from that part of the neighborhood in my life. I sat in the front room for a few minutes before I could settle down enough to go tell my sister what happened. She's 27, grew up here, knows the blocks better than I do. She listened to the whole thing. I told her the route, the Belmont side, between Gregory and Cervantes, the houses on the left and right, everything. When I described which specific block it was, something in her face shifted. She asked me which stretch, closest to Gregory or closer to Cervantes. Gregory, she nodded. Then she told me something she'd heard years ago from an old woman who lived on that block her whole life. There was a rule about that specific stretch of Belmont after the fireworks. You didn't walk through there after the celebration ended and the street started emptying. The block was fine during, when everyone was out and the music was going and the night was full. But once things quieted down, after the fireworks, alone on the path home, you didn't go through there. I asked what was on that block. She didn't know. The old woman never fully explained it, just said that stretch had been there long enough to hold certain things, and that those things got active on the nights when everyone was out celebrating. When people went back inside and the night went quiet, those things could tell you were alone. They said your name to let you know they saw you. My sister said she hadn't thought about that rule in years. Said she figured I'd think it was old neighborhood superstition if she ever brought it up. I don't walk that stretch at night anymore. I'm not sure I have a better explanation than what the old woman gave, and I'm not sure I need one. What I know is that 3 times on a block I've walked all my life, something said my name from the dark gaps between houses and went quiet when I answered. It knew my name. It was patient. It wasn't chasing me. I think that last part is the thing that won't leave me alone. Because something that's chasing you is something that wants to catch you. But something that just says your name and waits, says it again, waits again. That's something that already knows it has time. This is something I've only told one person, and I'm only writing this out now because I need to put it somewhere outside my own head. I live in Chattanooga. My family's cookout is always on the 4th. Been that way my whole life. And the host rotates between my mother's house and my aunt's, both on the south side of the city near the MLK Boulevard area. This past summer, it was at my mother's. I had volunteered to do the store run in the morning before things got busy. Juice, a specific brand of fruit punch that my family will not accept a substitute for, a bag of ice, and a 12-pack of grape soda that my nephew has requested every 4th since he was old enough to make requests. I stopped at a station near MLK on the way. It was maybe 9:30 in the morning. The station was already getting busy. The 4th brings people out early for supply runs, everybody hitting the same stores around the same time. I grabbed what I needed and got in line at the register. The man ahead of me was buying fruit punch, the same brand, then a bag of ice. Then, when the cashier rang him up, he reached back and put a 12-pack of grape soda on the counter. I almost said something out loud. It was such a specific combination of things. I just kind of smiled at the coincidence and waited my turn. He was probably in his 60s, a warm face, well-dressed for a morning supply run, collared shirt, clean sneakers, the kind of put together that made me think he was on his way somewhere that mattered to him. He caught me looking at his items and said he figured he might as well get it all in one stop. I laughed and said me too. He asked if I was from Chattanooga originally, and I said yes, South Side, and we talked briefly about the neighborhood while the cashier was processing everything. He had the particular ease of someone who had been in a place a long time and was comfortable in it. He paid, picked up his bags, and said happy 4th, and I said the same, and he walked out. I paid for my own things and went outside maybe 2 minutes later. He was standing at my car, not near it, not passing by it, at it, standing at the driver's side, facing it, the way you stand at a car when you're waiting on the driver to come out. I'll be honest, my first reaction was a very practical, oh, that's not right. A man I don't know, standing at my car. I slowed down. He looked up and saw me coming, and his expression didn't change, which is when I got the second reaction, which was less practical and harder to name, because his expression when he saw me was not the expression of someone caught doing something wrong. It was the expression of someone who had been waiting for me specifically. He said, "You going to the cookout on?" And then he said my mother's address, the house number, the street name. Correct. I stopped walking. He said, "Tell them I said I'll see them soon." And I looked down at my keys for half a second because I wanted something to do with my hands. And when I looked up, he wasn't there. I don't mean he had walked away. I mean he was simply not in the space where he had been standing. I drove to my mother's house trying to make sense of what had just happened. I told my mother when I got there, while we were putting the groceries away. I described the man, the age, the collared shirt, the face, the warmth. She listened without speaking. Then she asked what exactly he said before he was gone. I repeated it. She put down what she was holding, stood there a moment, then she told me that was her brother's line. Every 4th of July, end of the night, when it was time for him to go, he'd hug everyone, get his things, and say it before he walked out the door. Every year, the same words. "I'll see y'all soon." My uncle passed 2 summers ago. I was at his funeral. He lived his whole life in Chattanooga. I don't know how a man at a gas station on MLK Boulevard knew my mother's home address. I don't know how he knew my uncle's phrase, a phrase that was specific to him, that nobody would have used by coincidence. That was his specific going away line at every 4th of July gathering we ever had. I don't know where he went between me looking down at my keys and looking up. What I keep coming back to is the word he used. Not, "I'll see you soon," them. Like he already knew there was a whole house full of people waiting. My uncle knew how to make an exit. He was always the last one to stop hugging people and the first one out the door. And he always left that line hanging in the air like a promise. I said it out loud at the cookout this past 4th. At the end of the night, when people were starting to leave, I said it without really deciding to. "I'll see y'all soon." My mother looked at me from across the room. I don't know if it was the right thing to do, but it felt like something that needed to be said. I've been in Little Rock for 2 years now. I came for a job, and I'm still here, which I count as a success because I didn't know a single person in Arkansas when I moved, and it took a good 8 months before it started to feel like somewhere I actually lived, rather than somewhere I was visiting indefinitely. I don't have a car. I take the Cata bus everywhere, which in Little Rock means you learn the routes and the timing very precisely, because missing a bus is not a small inconvenience. The line I take most often runs through the Dunbar neighborhood on the south side, which is where I live. I know that route the way you know anything you do every day, not because you've studied it, but because it's become the shape of your day. On the 4th of July, the big fireworks show in Little Rock is called Pops on the River. It's a whole event. The Arkansas Symphony Orchestra plays, food trucks, people set up blankets down at the river market on the Arkansas River, and the fireworks start around 9:15. It's free. I went by myself, found a spot, watched the whole show. It was good. The kind of thing that reminds you that wherever you are, people are doing their best to make summer mean something. I caught a bus home a little before midnight. By that point, the crowd was dispersing and the bus was doing its best to handle it. I got on, found a seat near the middle, and settled in for the ride home. By the time we were through downtown and heading south, the bus had thinned out considerably. Just a few people scattered around. Everyone tired the way you get tired after a long evening outside. I know every stop on the route back to Dunbar. I have ridden this line so many times that the announcements are background noise, the way familiar music is background noise. You're aware of it without actively listening. I was looking at my phone when the automated announcement came through for a stop I didn't recognize. I looked up. The stop name that was announced was not a name I had ever heard on this route. I want to be specific about this. In 2 years of riding this bus regularly, I had never heard this name announced. I tried to catch it a second time in case I'd misheard, but the announcement had passed. I looked out the window. We had stopped. It was a corner in what looked like a residential area, some houses, a street light. There was nobody at the stop. The doors opened. Nobody got on, nobody got off. The doors closed, and we kept going. I checked my phone's transit app to see if I'd somehow missed a stop on the route I thought I knew so well. The route was exactly what I remembered. The stop that had been announced was not on it. Not as an active stop, not as a listed stop at all. I rode the rest of the way home and got off at my normal stop and walked to my apartment and went to bed. And I mostly wrote it off as a technical glitch. Automated systems malfunction, wrong audio file triggers, that kind of thing. I'm a practical person. I wanted a practical explanation. 2 days later, I was talking to my neighbor in the hallway. She's maybe 65, has lived in the Dunbar neighborhood her whole life, knows it the way only people who have stayed somewhere that long know a place. I mentioned the bus, mentioned that I'd heard a stop announced on the way home from the fireworks that I didn't recognize, and I told her the name of the stop. She looked at me for a moment. She didn't say anything immediately, which was not her usual speed. She's the kind of person who always has something to say. Then she said she knew that stop. It had been on that line a long time ago, before the reroute. She'd ridden it as a kid with her mother. They pulled it when they changed the route in the 1980s. Hadn't heard anyone mention it in decades. I told her the automated system announced it on the 4th, coming home after midnight. She nodded slowly. Not surprised, more like something settling into place. People had said that before, she told me, about that route on the 4th, coming home late. The old stop gets announced, always on the way back, never the other direction, only after midnight, heading home. I asked her why. She thought about it, didn't know why, only that the line was different back then, and the neighborhood it ran through was different. Maybe some things take a long time to understand they've been rerouted. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just thanked her and went inside. I went to Pop's on the river again this year. I took the bus back the same way, sat in the same general area of the bus. Around the same point in the route, heading south toward Dunbar, the automated announcement came on. I put my phone away and I listened. My daughter is 6. She goes hard on the 4th of July. The food, the family, the sparkler she's allowed to hold as long as I'm right there. And then around 10 o'clock, she crashes completely. That transition from fully awake to fully asleep takes about 45 seconds when it happens. 1 minute she's running around, the next she's a dead weight on my shoulder. We were at my mother-in-law's house in Cavalier Manor in Portsmouth for the neighborhood fireworks. Cavalier Manor has that feeling of a neighborhood that was intentional about itself. Wide streets, well-built houses, the kind of place people stay for decades. My husband's family has been there since the 1970s. My mother-in-law knows everyone on her block and most of the surrounding ones. The neighborhood fireworks wound down around 10:30. My daughter was already out. My husband's car was parked a few blocks away because the street had been closed for the celebration, and rather than wake her up to move her to a car for a 3-minute drive, I decided to walk. I know those streets well by now. It was a warm night, and she's not heavy yet. I had my phone and the route was simple. The streets were emptying out the way they do after neighborhood fireworks. Families folding chairs, groups breaking off toward their houses, the particular quieting of a block that's been loud for hours. I passed a few houses where people were still cleaning up or lingering on porches, exchanging that specific end of the night energy where nobody wants to be the first to really go inside. I was on Greenwood Drive, cutting toward the block where we'd parked, when I passed a house with every light on. I want to be clear about what I mean. Not one room, not porch lights. Every window was lit. The front door was open. There were people on the porch, maybe 5 or 6, standing in the warm light, talking. I could hear music from inside. Actual music playing. The kind of volume that says there's a real gathering happening. I could see through the open door to a room with people in it moving, the specific energy of a party that's hitting its stride. I registered it the way you register a party you're not at. A quick visual take, a brief thought about whether I knew anyone there, the decision that I didn't and to keep walking. I adjusted my daughter on my shoulder and kept going. Got to the car, got her buckled in, drove the few blocks back. The next morning I was loading things into the car to head home when my neighbor, she's lived on that street since the 1970s, has the particular authority of someone who has watched a neighborhood change and stay the same and change again over 5 decades. Came out to check her mail. We talked for a few minutes the way we do, and I mentioned the party I'd walked past on Greenwood. Described the house by where it sat on the block. She got very still. She asked me to describe what I saw again. I did. The lights, the open door, the people on the porch, the music. The house had been empty for years. Family moved out, city condemned it. Nobody had been inside since at least 2019. Windows boarded in the back, electricity cut. She looked at me when I described which house it was. Something shifted in her face. She'd heard this before. Not from that night, but before. People walking past on the 4th, after it got late, seeing lights on in that house, hearing music, seeing people on the porch. She'd never seen it herself, but she'd heard it described more than once. I asked who would be in a condemned house on the 4th of July. She couldn't say for certain. What she told me was that some families had been in those houses since the very beginning, and that she believes some things don't let go of a place just because the paperwork says they should. Don't go back and knock, not as a warning exactly, more as the kind of practical advice you'd give about any situation that was outside the normal order of things. Like she was acknowledging that the thought might occur to me, She went back inside. I drove home. My daughter slept the whole way. She woke up in a great mood and told me the fireworks had been the best part and asked when we could go back. I told her next year. Same neighborhood. And I thought about the house on Greenwood Drive and whether the lights would be on next 4th and whether the people on the porch would be there again. And I thought about what my neighbor said about not going back and knocking. I'm not going to knock, but I'll walk past just to see. Okay, if you made it this far, I want to thank you again for taking the time to watch the video. Please like, share, subscribe, hype, get in those comments and tell me which story was your favorite. Until the next time.